Yo, what up, everyone? So I wanted to do a track by track breakdown of Out of the Grave. Just sit down. I guess I'm standing up, and apologies for the room slash closet I'm in. But yeah, I just want to do like a one take, track by track commentary because I think it's really cool. Hearing my favorite artists talk about, kind of their thought process behind certain songs and a little backstories, whatever kind of comes, to the front of their brain on songs, particularly albums, when it's something new and kind of forward thinking. So yeah, I just wanted to talk about each song. So we'll start with A Light in the Darkness, and I'll just kind of play it in the background and talk a little bit about it. So, A Light in the Darkness, obviously, it's a bit different than the rest of the album. It's more stripped back, but it has that imagery that's consistent throughout, of kind of just this beacon of light in a dark world. And obviously that's a big kind of part of the album, metaphor. And I think the cool thing that really ties this track down to the album, despite the lack of huge walls of sound and everything, what really ties it down is that guitar, that constant, that is playing synchronized, the synchronized melody, or chords just kind of arpeggiated and slowed down. So if you listen to the outro of Synchronize, you actually are kind of getting a taste of this. And initially the idea started as an outro for Synchronize, and then I started playing around with the vocoding idea, and the hook came to my brain, and I'm like, oh, that's so catchy. This needs to be its own song. But it's definitely an introduction. Just the linear nature of it, the more stripped back nature of it, and this kind of hook driven progression. And yeah, I just thought, what a cool and kind of unique way to start this thing off. So really proud of how the lyrics turned out as well. Yeah, just really close to my heart. So, Oh Warrior. Let me take a sip of water. Man, Oh Warrior was the very, very last song that I finished. It was kind of a pain. But I think that the sleep token love that I have really comes out on this one. It's like if Sleep Token did a film score for like some fantasy film. I think that's maybe, it would sound something like this if you take away all the dubstep. But yeah, I'm really proud of this one. I love the repetition of Oh Warrior. I've never really written a song with that much repetition, but it's a super cool, I don't know, it just comes across really in an interesting and cinematic way in the song. The first drop, and I think this song may be like the oldest song on the album, and that first drop was kind of done years ago. I want to say like a couple years ago, if not more, like maybe 3 years ago. This demo is super old, but I kind of came back to it because I really liked the atmosphere, and I laid down the vocal and added the kind of metal section, and that's when it started feeling like an Out of the Grave record to me. And so yeah, between the songwriting, lyrically, and going into that kind of metal breakdown sensibility that I like to do, while keeping everything super cinematic, it fit the album, and really was a very clear moment in the story, to me. And yeah, That's one of the songs that made it through like this insane pruning I did of the album, where I basically cut all of the old ideas off of the album except "Oh Warrior." So yeah, I just really love the vocal on this one. And then basically the last thing that I did for the entirety of the album was add this final drop in "Oh Warrior." So where the chords change, because initially it just went back to the first drop and I was bored. You know, it didn't tell a story by doing that. But kind of diving into the darkness of the warrior spirit and the anger and the violence, but resolving into something, transmuting that into something heroic and reflecting that through the music, really, really landed in a powerful way by altering the chords and doing like a taste of the synchronized melody as kind of that final melody, which is, you know, obviously different contextually because the chords than synchronized. Synchronized is quite dark, but it's still, you know, that the last drop in "Oh Warrior" has that very heroic, very King of None. You know, we got the bells ringing and the choir singing, and yeah, I think it's just a really powerful message of using that inner warrior for good, and you know, doubling down on courage as, you know, kind of the main theme here, and not letting pride and vanity consume you. Rite of the Seeker, definitely the most popular song I've ever released. Shout out, I think, to TikTok primarily for that happening. But I've never, of all the labels I've released on, the big artists I've remixed, nothing has ever compared to what Rite of the Seeker has done, and it's just really baffling to me because it's really one of the black sheeps of this sheeps. I think plural is just sheep. It's let's call it a black sheep of the album. At least, you know, I think just sonically it's a bit different, and it's super linear, and it was kind of my first jump into that direction, I guess. Like the first truly linear song that I created for the album, where it just never repeats itself, and you know, it's got this very ritualistic evil spirit to it, and that's intentional. A bit of mystery too, but kind of mystery that turns into evil, and it's essentially the main theme that there's kind of an A and B, which is what this music box is doing. Bum 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 bum. That melody was like I wrote that, I'm like, this is gonna be the antagonist melody for this story. Like, this is so creepy, for lack of a more inspiring word. And then it was the vocal comes in, and that's just like pure evil, and they're kind of playing off of each other, these two melodies. And yeah, it just made sense. I just like this experimental kind of fun thing that I wanted to try out, but the theme was so strong that it like, oh, okay, this is gonna be the antagonist theme, and I'm gonna kind of sprinkle this theme throughout the album. But this song kind of works as the introduction to the antagonist, and of course Vivian takes over about halfway through the song and just delivers these insane moments that I could not have pulled off. And all of her work is super, you know, dark, cinematic, like right down this kind of lane. And if you like that more linear, instrumental, ethnic kind of vibe, go check out her music, because it's very similar to this type of thing. But yeah, I was kind of excited to keep my writing and my touch, my imprint kind of on this track, even with Vivian jumping in and doing all this crazy stuff. And I mean that with all respect, because this song is so cool, and I definitely could not have pulled off what she was able to do. Yeah, I think this was one of the starting points for the album too, Rite of the Seeker. It's one of those first things where I wrote that boom, 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 boom. I wrote that, and I'm like, that's in. That's part of the album. And the concept really started to form. So The Fall, it's kind of this extension of Rite of the Seeker, where we take that main female vocal lead, but we alter it a bit. So the A section feels really similar, but then the B part of the melody kind of evolves into this new direction. And the tempo of the song is a little bit different. And it really kind of doubles down on this mid-tempo feeling of like traditional, EDM mid-tempo. Everyone remembers when that was like the big thing for a year or whatever, but kind of introducing the more metal and melodic dubstep elements. So this kind of takes that idea, introduce, the evil of Rite of the Seeker, introduce and rebels against it. Vocal just said, "I will not follow your lead." Perfect example of kind of fighting against that darkness and refusing it and refuting it. And yeah, we kind of take this mid-tempo approach, but it's still very rooted in the same energy. And then we start to introduce these more metal elements. We go into a proper metal breakdown, and then the choirs take over, and it becomes this full melodic bass moment of just really slow but powerful, impactful kind of melodic dubstep drop. This is one song that did not evolve that much from start to finish, and maybe the only song on the album that didn't undergo dramatic changes from start to finish. This song stayed relatively the same from the early demo to its finality. The instrumental really came together in a day or two, I feel. If I remember correctly, it just kind of flowed. And I guess I kind of looked at it like, oh, I'm doing a remix of Rite of the Seeker in a sense. And I guess that kind of opened up my mind to take it in these new directions. Yeah. I'm thinking if there's anything else I want to say about The Fall. I guess this little chord change here is something I did add at the very end, like right before the album was done. But it's a small piece of the song. The rest of it almost identical. But yeah, man, that's one that didn't change too much, and I love that change right there. When we go to the choirs, it's like, oh god, something bad's happening, and the song's called The Fall, and it's about one of the good guys falling in battle. So I wanted this very tragic kind of moment happening here, and everything is kind of glued together by this metal vocal, super distorted, kind of old school, that we get to hear throughout the album a lot. So it really ties it all together between the motif from Rite of the Seeker playing through and the vocals. So let's jump into The Harbinger. I would say The Harbinger is definitely the most aggressive song on the album. And let's see. It went through, pretty dramatic changes. So the first half of the song was written, and it was kind of this homage to all of the metalcore that I love and listen to, and bands like Eminence that are merging these orchestral elements into metalcore. So it's kind of this orchestral, cinematic, metal hybrid music. And I wanted to do that with dubstep flavors added. And I just really love I just love the melody. It's so it's this ancient mystery, this ancient darkness. That's the kind of feelings that it evokes for me. And I wrote that melody when I was traveling, and it was just like, oh man. But I had already, the album was already taking shape, and this song became a last minute addition to the album because of that. And last minute, by that I mean the last 3-4 months, I decided to put the Harbinger on the album and take off a different song that wasn't as, I don't know, it wasn't delivering on the themes as much as I wanted it to. It didn't fit quite as nicely as the Harbinger did. Especially, you know, just the way that the melodic dubstep and metal, it's all merged together by this melody that's like this harmonic minor thing that's just pure evil. It just worked so well. I was frankly quite surprised. And it was really, really difficult to write the like chords for this. And Eric, Celestial Void, helped me when I got stuck. I remember like banging my head against the desk in my room. And I lived with Eric at the time. And he like got home from work or something. I'm like, Eric, what is wrong with this? Like, and it was just like one little note change to like double down on. I was trying to like write it in a traditional harmonic minor, but it like kind of goes out of that into like maybe Dorian or something, some weird musical mode stuff happening. And Eric kind of helped me with these two small tweaks that completely made sense, made the chord progression make sense. Yeah, and then kind of this song dramatically evolves. The tempo just drops, and you go into this metal breakdown with these like Bulgarian choirs happening. And that was just another example of like these cinematic metal bands that I'm listening to really just like taking hold of me. And then I got the idea, you know, I was listening to some Dream War. I love their music. And what was the song? They did a remix of Satellite Empire that I'm obsessed with. And it has these, I want to say Bulgarian choirs. Forgive me if that's the wrong term. And it kind of doubles down on that as like the main melody for the drop, which is super cool. And so I'm like, hey, I put these Bulgarian choirs into this metal breakdown. What if I reintroduce them over new chords? And so, yeah, we just went to the actual minor instead of like the harmonic minor and introduced new chords under the choirs and came up with this final drop, which really, again, took the song on a journey for me. Whereas before it was just pure darkness. And again, you know, we see the theme of transmuting that darkness, that shadow, into something heroic and in something powerful. And I think that Harbinger really delivers on that message. Catacomb, the very, very last minute edition. The album was I had about a month before I had to submit it because I committed to the May 2nd deadline. And so it's like April 1st, April 2nd. I had to submit it April 2nd to be a month out from May 2nd. So this was March 1st or 2nd or 3rd. I just remember having a month until I had to submit the album. And there was this one song that was purely instrumental, and it was just not... The way I looked at it was like I had 9 songs on the album that were 10 out of 10. Like, put it on my tombstone. I'm beyond proud, and I think these are some of the coolest songs ever. And then I had one song that was like kind of a break. It was instrumental, it was orchestral, it was super movie score, but it just wasn't that 10 out of 10 iconic song that I needed it to be for this album. And I didn't want to half-ass it in any part of it. And so I sat down and wrote Catacomb, which has some more, I would say, kind of Sleep Token flavor, you know, going into this rap section with a different time signature kind of going on. Because at the time, what did Sleep Token drop this song called Emergence, as a single. I think the first single off of their, new album that they announced. So it was like, oh, big moment. And I was just like listening to this song on repeat, and I'm like, oh, should I do it? Oh, should I try it? And I tried it out. I laid down a rap. I thought it'd be stupid, and it turned out really cool. I was kind of listening to it like, oh, why is it good? And like my girlfriend comes in, and I'm like, hey, listen to this. And she's like, oh, why is it good? And so the rap, made the cut. But I think the rest of the song is very, very much in that vein of just epic, high energy, elements of metal. This one's like super orchestral though, and I really liked leaning into this. This song doesn't really have a melodic dubstep section or a proper metal breakdown. It's like a ballad that turns into this kind of dark, cinematic, explosive moment. And the story it tells is very dear to me, a very painful one about loss. And of course loss is a theme that has was introduced in the fall, and actually introduced in the first song, A Light in the Darkness, the intro. But loss is another very prevalent theme that plays throughout the album. And Catacomb really captured that. It had this really catchy piano melody. And that's kind of when I knew that it was an album contender, is when I wrote that piano. And it all kind of blossomed out of that. I think it's super catchy. It's in this kind of like 3/4 feel or triplet feel. So yeah, I love the progression of Catacomb from start to finish. It's a super unique journey. Synchronize, in my mind, is like the quintessential Out of the Grave song, and that's why I made it the first single. So when I had kind of like this draft version of the album, and I wrote Synchronize, and that's kind of the catalyst of the entire revamp, where I went in and I gutted all the songs that weren't 10 out of 10 songs, and that was like half the album. And I'm like, man, this song has the feeling. It's nuanced, the feeling, but it has exactly what it is. It's this charge against endless darkness. It is a light in the darkness, and it has the hope, the courage, the sorrow, all of these complex emotions and their relations tied together. And so I felt that in the instrumental, and so when I sat down to write it, I just thought, I'm gonna write the story of my life. And the first words that came out were, "My world is violent." And from there, the lyrics just poured out of me, and I wrote the song of my life. And that had so much power in it, and was so fulfilling to me, that I decided this is what the album's going to be based around. This is the standard, this is the center pillar, and everything kind of needs to revolve around it. And I already told you how that turned into A Light in the Darkness. I'm like, oh, great way to start the album is by a altered version, if you will, of the main song, which is Synchronize. As I finished the album, Break the Chains kind of became the other pillar. And I think that as the album progresses, it's pretty dark until, Synchronize being like the climax of that darkness. And then hope is kind of introduced in sprinkles in Synchronize, and then you get more of that hope, heroism, kind kind of coming through in Dawnbringer, and then it just overflows and Break the Chains into the finale of Out of the Grave. So, you know, it's a I don't know, it just became that turning point in the album of like transmuting the shadow into something positive and courageous. Production wise, of course, it gets all those metalcore breakdown flavors in it, and that was very fun for me to add in, and played into the very dramatic you know, I guess moments of expressing that violence that the song expresses. Dawnbringer. So Dawnbringer is kind of to synchronize as The Fall is to Ride the Seeker. It kind of came months later, you know, than the original song, but kind of started as a sort of remix, if you will. So, you know, since Synchronize has that main motif, ba, da, 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 you're hearing it right now on the flute. I knew that would be the protagonist's theme, and so I wanted to explore that more. And Dawnbringer kind of doubles down on that, and then explores a lot of metal that Mick Gordon has produced, so like the Doom soundtrack. People call it Doom metal, they call it Argent metal, but it's super cinematic, and it's just mad energy. I love it. So it just kind of was a natural progression to go from this heroic thing into this this breakdown, kind of showing that battle between light and darkness internally, the you know, the shadow kind of trying to come out, but the light refusing it and transmuting it into something that could be productive. And that's kind of how the song evolves. We then go into the Dorian mode after the metal section, and that gives it this very kind of like religious feeling to it in my mind. This like very sanctified and yet kind of adventurous spirit. Again, taking, you know, Azrael, the main, you know, character's theme, going into this violent moment, this battle with the shadow, and then coming out in this heroic blaze of glory, and kind of the light outshining the darkness. And I think that's really the turning point, is going into that Dorian mode and exploring, you know, the electric guitar comes in and you get this like adventurous, cool thing happening, and it goes in this proper slow, very slow cinematic bass moment that's quite heroic. Break the Chains. Yeah, Break the Chains. I cried a lot of tears writing Break the Chains. Man, there's so much to say. It's another one of those like story of my life songs where this, though, it kind of like, whereas Synchronize looks at the full picture of my life, Break the Chains looks at the particular period that this album's kind of written about, which is this 2 to 3 year period. When I left home, I was chasing the dream as Digital Skies and all that, and everything kind of, I got lost, and everything I cared about stopped mattering, and it was a really difficult time. And the documentary talks more about that, but you know, everything that I put my faith in and put value, you know, that I put on a pedestal, it all became worthless to me. It all became something that I just didn't care about, and that's crushing, and that makes you look in the mirror and reevaluate why are you here? What are you doing on this earth? And so Break the Chains is kind of like me going through all of that and then coming out on the other end, seeing what I'm here to do, understanding that all of this was necessary in this character development, this transformation I went through. It all made me who I am and resulted in King of None and Out of the Grave. And so how, yeah, one of the most difficult times in my life became like a rebirth. And, you know, that really comes across after the heavy drop when the chords change, as they do, to this very hopeful moment. And we reintroduce the synchronized melody. But it's under this new chord progression that's very, very different feeling than synchronize. So there's a couple note changes too that play into that, but just kind of revisiting that melody, that main theme of the album, in a new light after expressing and while expressing, you know, this transformative journey through lyrics. It was a cathartic experience to write, and of course Eric made it 10 times better than what it would have been as he does, but I'm really proud of how it came out. Out of the Grave, the last song and title of the album. This one's a bit different. It is not so electronic until the very, very end, but it really leans into the cinematic metal, but like clean, kind of poppy, kind of electronic production style. It's kind of reminiscent of some of Satellite Empire's stuff. And yeah, it's another one that kind of flowed out of me and didn't really go through a ton of changes from start to finish. The songwriting really drives the message of the album home, and it's kind of this last battle cry. And I think that becomes very prevalent at the end of the song when you're just getting hit by these walls of sound. But yeah, I just wanted to explore a more, I don't know, this like kind of choir, chanty, but guitar driven sound. And I think that the songwriting is it's so rooted in the Out of the Grave songwriting style that it fits. But yeah, it's just kind of taking that last part of Break the Chains and doubling down on it, of this like, I'm going to fight until my final breath. This is my battle cry. You know, if I die, I die, but I'm fighting to the end. And that's kind of the hopeful, courageous, charge against all odds message that I wanted to deliver with the album. And so I decided to end on that. And yeah, I thought ending on something a bit different was, I don't know, just it felt right in my heart. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about that song. So I hope you've enjoyed this track by track walkthrough. You know, just kind of my thoughts, super raw, unedited, and I hope that you are enjoying the album. And thanks for watching. Have a good one.